All right, everyone get ready. We're going deep today, diving into a place you probably don't think about too much. The incredible world inside your large intestine.
A fascinating place it is.
Our guide today is Dr. Eldeeb's Physiology handout. And believe me, this is way more exciting than it sounds.
Yeah.
Ready to find out what's really happening beyond your stomach.
Most folks think of the large intestine, as just this waste processing plant. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a simple thing.
Like it's just a garbage disposal.
Yeah.
But this deep dive, well, it reveals that it's really more like a bustling city. There's a whole lot going on in there.
Exactly. Why don't we start with the basics? The structure.
Okay.
Unlike your small intestine, the large intestine, also called the colon, has a wider diameter.
Wider.
And it's not just a smooth tube either. Imagine, if you will, a series of pouches. These pouches are created by bands of muscle called tinea coli.
So it's more like a string of sounds, like water balloons. I mean, are the contractions visible from the outside?
Haha, not quite. But you're getting the idea. These pouches, we call them haustra, are really important for the colon's function. And, this goes way beyond, just simple waste removal.
Okay, so what's happening there? What's the colon putting out besides,
Yeah.
well,
Great question. It secretes mucus.
a mucus, okay.
And this mucus is way more than just a lubricant. It actually protects the colon lining from all that, waste hanging around in there.
I see.
It helps bind everything together. And what's amazing, it's stimulated just by contact with the contents.
Really?
No hormones needed.
So the more stuff in there, the more mucus it produces.
Exactly.
That's a pretty neat feedback loop.
Now, besides mucus, the colon also secretes potassium.
Potassium, interesting.
And this actually relates to why chronic diarrhea can cause hypokalemia.
Low potassium.
Low potassium.
Okay, low potassium.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound good. What are the implications of that?
Well, think muscle cramps,
Oh,
weakness, even in serious cases, heart rhythm issues. Basically, with diarrhea, you can flush out too much potassium. And that's where a hormone called aldosterone steps in.
aldosterone.
Aldosterone helps regulate those potassium levels, especially when you eat, a high potassium diet.
Aldosterone.
Yeah.
The potassium regulator. Got it. But wait a second. I thought the main job of the large intestine was absorbing things, not secreting them.
You're absolutely right. It does both. And its absorption abilities, they're pretty amazing.
All right, give me the rundown. What exactly is getting absorbed in there?
Well, the biggest one is water,
Water, okay.
up to 1.5 liters a day.
Really?
That's crucial to stop you getting dehydrated all the time.
Yeah, wow.
Then there's sodium,
Okay.
actively absorbed through these special channels. And this is actually why when you switch to a low-salt diet, your body, it adapts by upping the sodium absorption in the colon. A little help from our friend aldosterone.
So our bodies are always working to, keep things in balance.
Yeah.
What else is getting absorbed?
Chloride gets reabsorbed. But in exchange for bicarbonate, which is secreted,
Okay.
this all plays into your body's acid-base balance. Make sure things don't get too acidic or alkaline.
Right.
And you might be surprised, even some medications can get absorbed through the colon. This is important for rectal administration, especially with children.
Interesting. So what doesn't get absorbed in the large intestine?
Another good question. While water, electrolytes, even some medications are being absorbed, carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, they're not.
Okay.
So you can't rely on rectal feeding for all your nutrition.
Makes sense. Okay, so we've covered what goes in and out, but what about those tiny residents we can't forget? The bacteria.
Ah, yes. The world of the gut microbiome. Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
When babies are born, their intestines, they're sterile.
Sterile, wow.
And that first bowel movement, meconium, it's this greenish, black, almost tar-like substance.
Right, meconium.
Yeah.
Pretty unmistakable.
Made up of mostly amniotic fluid and some other things, too.
Okay. But how do these helpful bacteria even get in there?
Well, shortly after birth, bacteria start colonizing the gut, mostly through contact with the environment and feeding. And these bacteria stick with us, forming this complex ecosystem that helps them and us.
So it's not a parasitic relationship.
Not at all.
These bacteria are actually doing us favors.
They are. We give them a home.
A home.
And they help us synthesize some essential vitamins.
Okay.
Like vitamin K and some B vitamins.
Okay.
Including the superstar, folate.
Folate, the superstar.
They also are crucial in processing bile salts and pigments, which actually impacts the color of our stool.
Wait, so gut bacteria affect the color of our poop?
They do, and get this, they break down amino acids.
Yeah.
And that contributes to, well, the unique aroma of our fecal matter.
So that's where that comes
Yeah.
from. I guess it's all part of a healthy gut, ecosystem.
It is. They also break down urea, which is really important in cases of liver failure where ammonia buildup can be dangerous. They also play a part in gas production. And you might be surprised to learn that about half the gas in flatulence is nitrogen from swallowed air.
Huh. So it's not all beans' fault.
Yeah.
Okay. What else do these amazing bacteria do?
One of their most crucial roles is in developing our immune system. A healthy gut microbiome, well, it's essential for a strong immune response.
Wow, this is blowing my mind. These little guys are doing so much for us. But how does all this stuff move through? I mean, it's not just sitting there, right?
Right. The large intestine, it has 3 main types of movement, or motility.
Motility.
Segmentation contractions,
Okay.
peristalsis,
Mm-hmm.
and mass movements.
Okay, break those down for me. What are those exactly?
Think of segmentation contractions like a food processor.
Like a food processor, okay.
They chop and mix the contents of the colon, and that helps with absorption.
Okay.
Peristalsis, well, that's the classic wave-like motion that we usually think of with digestion.
Right, right.
It propels things forward, but sometimes things can move in reverse.
Wait, reverse, what's that all about?
It's called antiperistalsis. It's like putting on the brakes, you know,
Okay.
slowing things down to give more time for absorption. Pretty cool, right?
Yeah, so it's not just a one-way street down there.
Exactly. And then we have what we might call the grand finale.
A grand finale, okay.
Mass movements. These are powerful contractions.
Okay.
They clear out whole sections of the colon.
Wow, that sounds intense. How often does that happen?
Several times a day, usually.
Well,
And it's usually triggered by the gastrocolic reflex. Have you ever felt that urge to go shortly after a meal?
oh yeah, definitely. Is that what's happening?
That's it. That's the gastrocolic reflex in action. It's this complex process.
Okay.
Involves hormones and nerves.
I see.
Triggered by eating, especially by fat in the small intestine.
So it's not just about eating. It's also about the type of food we eat.
Yes.
Now I'm really rethinking my post-meal routine. But what about the final act? How does the actual process of defecation work?
All right, let's talk about how it all comes together. It's really this fascinating mix of involuntary reflexes and then our voluntary control.
Okay, I'm all ears. Walk me through it.
When the rectum fills with feces, it stretches.
Okay.
And that sends signals up to your spinal cord.
Okay.
And that triggers a reflex.
Okay.
Causes the rectum to contract and the internal anal sphincter to relax. And here's where we get to choose.
Our turn.
The external anal sphincter, it's under our control.
That's why we can, hold it until a convenient time.
Precisely. And when we're ready to, to go, we increase that abdominal pressure by straining.
Okay.
And there's this muscle in the pelvic floor, the levator anal.
Levator ani.
It actually helps to pull the anal canal over the fecal mass, which makes the whole thing more efficient.
Wow. So there's like a whole choreography to it.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much conscious control we have. But what about fiber? Doesn't that help to, keep things moving smoothly?
You're absolutely right. Fiber is really important in a healthy large intestine.
Okay, tell me more about fiber. Why is it so important?
Essentially, fiber, it's indigestible plant material.
Okay.
So it goes right through the small intestine untouched, and it arrives in the colon ready to work its magic.
Ready to work its magic.
It acts like a sponge, absorbing water, adding bulk to the stool. This stimulates those colonic contractions we talked about, helping things move along.
So it's like a natural laxative.
In a way, yes. But unlike those harsh laxatives, fiber works gently and naturally. And as a bonus, it feeds those beneficial gut bacteria we talked about.
Right, those little guys need their fiber. But let's get real for a second. What exactly is in our poop? We've all wondered.
Well, the main ingredient is water, about 75%.
Okay.
And then the solids that are left, they're a mix of bacteria, epithelial cells from the lining of the intestine, mucus, undigested fiber, and more. You might be surprised to learn that most fecal matter, it isn't actually undigested food,
Really?
but byproducts of our own bodies and of our gut bacteria.
Wow, so it's more about what we're shedding than what we're eating.
Right.
That's fascinating. What about the color and the, the smell?
Well, the color, that's mostly due to a pigment called stercobilinogen,
Secretion.
which comes from the breakdown of bile pigments.
Okay.
And that lovely aroma, that's thanks to amines, they're produced by the bacterial action.
Bacterial action, all right.
Usually poop is a little alkaline,
Alkaline.
with a pH around 7 to 7.5.
It's amazing how much science goes into something we usually, flush away without a second thought. This deep dive, it's given me a whole new appreciation for my large intestine.
It's truly a remarkable organ working behind the scenes to keep us healthy.
Absolutely. And speaking of keeping things healthy, we've got to talk about constipation.
Yes.
What causes it? What can we do about it? We'll explore that and more when we continue our deep dive in part 2.
We've talked about how amazing the large intestine is, but, sometimes things go wrong.
Right. I'm like constipation.
Yeah.
Not exactly a fun topic, but,
Mhm.
everybody experiences it at some point. I always thought it was just, about things moving too slowly, through the gut.
Mhm.
Is that
That's the traditional way of thinking about it. But, our understanding has evolved. It's thought now to be more about an imbalance
the imbalance of it?
between secretion and absorption in the colon.
Okay.
Remember all that water reabsorption we talked about?
Yeah, the colon's like a water reclamation plant.
Exactly. But if too much water gets absorbed, well, the stool becomes dry and hard to pass.
So it's not just about, speed, but also consistency.
Right.
So what causes this imbalance?
Lots of things. Diet is a big one, of course.
Right.
Not enough fiber, not enough fluids are classic culprits.
Yeah.
But certain medications can contribute, hormonal changes, even stress.
Stress poop is real, folks.
Yeah.
But seriously, we touched on fiber earlier.
Right.
Why is it so crucial for preventing constipation?
Well, fiber is indigestible.
Okay.
It passes right through the small intestine untouched.
Goes right through.
Arrives in the colon, ready to work its magic.
Ready to work its magic.
It acts like a sponge, absorbing water, adding bulk to the stool.
I see.
This stimulates those colonic contractions that we talked about, helping things move along.
So it's like a natural laxative?
You could say that. But unlike, harsh laxatives,
Yeah.
fiber works gently and naturally.
Yeah.
Plus, it feeds those good gut bacteria that we talked about.
Right. Those little guys need their fiber fix.
Yeah.
So if someone is, struggling with constipation, is loading up on fiber the best advice?
Well, it's not quite that simple.
Okay.
It's important to increase fiber intake gradually.
Gradually.
Too much too soon can actually make things worse, causing gas and bloating.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And of course, drinking plenty of water is essential.
Hydration is key. But what if someone's, tried all the lifestyle changes and they're still dealing with constipation? Are there medications that can help?
There's this newer class of drugs.
Okay.
They work by enhancing chloride secretion in the colon.
Chloride secretion. How does that fit into the whole, poop picture again?
Remember how chloride and bicarbonate are exchanged?
Mm-hmm.
By increasing chloride secretion,
Okay.
these drugs pull more water into the colon,
I see.
making the stool softer and easier to pass.
So they work on that secretion absorption balance
Right.
we talked about.
Exactly.
It's amazing how much science, goes into something we often take for granted.
It really is. It really shows how interconnected all these processes in the large intestine are.
We've talked about the ins and outs, the bacteria, the movement, even constipation.
We have.
But what about when things go in reverse, so to speak?
You mean like vomiting?
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
But also things like diarrhea.
Oh,
What's happening in the large intestine when things, go wrong in that direction?
that's a great question, and it's a whole other deep dive. But in a nutshell, diarrhea is basically the opposite of constipation.
Okay,
Instead of too much water absorption. There's
Yeah.
not enough. The stool is too watery and passes through the colon too quickly.
So it's all about that delicate balance again.
Exactly. And just like constipation, there are lots of causes of diarrhea. Infections, food intolerances, even certain medications
Yeah.
can disrupt the normal function of the large intestine.
This is making me realize how important it is to take care of our gut health. It's not just about digestion. It's connected to so many other things about our well-being.
It really is. The large intestine is kind of an unsung hero, working tirelessly to keep us healthy.
Speaking of heroes, you mentioned earlier that the gut microbiome is a hot area of research.
It is.
What are scientists discovering about the connection between gut bacteria and our overall health?
It's incredibly exciting. We're finding out that our gut bacteria play a role in so many things. Our immune system, digestion, our mental health, even chronic diseases.
Wow, it's like a whole universe inside of us.
Exactly. And we're really just beginning to understand this complex ecosystem
Okay.
and how it interacts with our bodies.
So much is still unknown, but it seems clear that a healthy gut microbiome is crucial
Yes.
for overall well-being.
Yeah.
What are some practical things people can do to support their gut bacteria?
Well, diet is a major factor. Eating a variety of fiber-rich foods, fruits, vegetables, whole grains,
Right.
provides nourishment for those good bacteria.
So that's where the term prebiotics comes in.
Exactly. Prebiotics, they're basically food for our gut bacteria.
What about probiotics? Those are the actual good bacteria, right?
Yes, probiotics are live bacteria,
Yeah.
and you can find them in fermented foods like yogurt, sauerkraut, or you can take them as supplements.
Right.
They can help replenish and diversify that gut microbiome.
So prebiotics feed the good bacteria,
Mhm.
and probiotics provide, a fresh supply.
Yes,
Got it. Are there any other lifestyle factors that affect gut health?
absolutely. Getting enough sleep,
Late
managing stress, even regular exercise
Wow.
can all contribute to a healthy gut microbiome.
It's amazing how everything is interconnected. With all this talk about bacteria, it's easy to forget that our large intestine is also made up of, cells.
Yes.
What can you tell us about those cells and, how they contribute to the overall function of the colon?
The lining of the large intestine, we call it the epithelium,
Okay.
is made up of different types of cells, and they play key roles in absorption, secretion, and protection.
Okay.
For example, there are these special cells called goblet cells,
Goblet cells.
and they produce that mucus we talked about.
Goblet cells. I love that name. It sounds like something out of a fantasy novel.
Right. And they're incredibly important for protecting the colon from damage and inflammation.
So what about those epithelial cells that we find in our poop?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
Those epithelial cells lining the colon, they're constantly being shed and replaced.
Okay.
That's why we see a small amount of these cells, in our stool.
It's a reminder that our bodies are in a constant state of renewal.
Exactly. And speaking of renewal, research suggests that certain foods might promote the growth of healthy epithelial cells in the colon.
Oh, don't know.
Well, there's some evidence that short-chain fatty acids,
Okay.
which are produced by the fermentation of fiber by those gut bacteria,
Right.
may actually help nourish and protect the colon lining.
So another reason to, eat our fiber.
Absolutely.
This is also fascinating. It's like peeling back the layers of an onion,
Yeah,
revealing more and more complexity with each layer.
it is.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
Before we wrap things up in part 3, what's one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember about their large intestine? Welcome back to the deep dive. We've been on this amazing journey through the world of the large intestine.
We've uncovered a lot, haven't we?
So much more than, just a place for waste.
It really is.
We've learned about the anatomy, how it secretes and absorbs, the amazing ecosystem of gut bacteria, and even how poop works.
We've touched on some common problems, too.
Right.
Constipation, diarrhea, highlighting how important it is to keep that balance in the colon.
But like any good deep dive, I feel like we've uncovered more questions than answers.
That's often the case, isn't it?
Like you said before, there's still so much that we don't know about the large intestine,
Right.
especially about the gut microbiome.
Yeah, the research is constantly evolving, and we're learning more every day about how our gut bacteria affect our overall health.
It really makes you realize how connected our bodies are.
It does.
The large intestine isn't just an organ on its own. It's part of this huge network.
Exactly. Its functions are linked to the stomach, the small intestine, the liver, the pancreas, the nervous system, even our immune system.
Wow. It's like this web of connections.
Yes.
All working to keep us, alive and functioning.
Amazing, isn't it?
This deep dive has really given me a new appreciation for how complex and resilient our bodies are.
It really underscores how important it is to take a holistic view of our health. What we eat, how we handle stress, even the medications we take. These can all have an impact on our gut health, and that affects our overall well-being.
So as we wrap up, what's the one thing you want our listeners to remember about their large intestine?
I think the most important thing is to remember that it's a vital organ. It has so many functions. It's not just about waste. It's about keeping things balanced, absorbing nutrients, supporting our immune system, and even influencing our mental health.
It's a good reminder to treat our gut with respect and make choices that will keep it healthy.
Exactly. And remember, knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
The more we know about how our bodies work, the better we can take care of them.
Well said. To our listeners, keep learning, keep exploring, keep diving deep into that fascinating world inside you. And be sure to check out the show notes. You'll find resources there on gut health and the latest research.
It's been great exploring with you.
Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the large intestine. Until next time, stay curious.